the procedural. And are you one of our applicants? We are okay.
And before
You go live.
we start, I just want to let you know, Melina was not able to make it, so I will be trying my best to be the secretary. So
Okay.
maybe whenever we need roll call.
Yeah, obviously. And obviously you'll take the minutes like after anyway from video.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right. It is now 5:01 and I call to order this May monthly meeting of the Historic Review Committee on this 14th day of May. Can we please have the roll call from staff?
Yes, Chairperson Rill,
Here.
Melissa Childs,
Here.
Maria Samora,
Here.
David Pollitt, was not here. Trustee Schnicker is also not here. Jim Harper.
Here.
All right.
Okay. All right, so now, if there are any proposed amendments to this evening's agenda?
I just wanted to offer, since we are missing two members, if we wanted to move appointments to the next meeting or not.
Okay. Yeah, why don't we talk about that when we get to that agenda item? We don't need to move it in terms of the order for tonight, though. We would do that during that agenda item.
Oh, yeah, I was just offering to take it off the agenda, but we can.
Yeah, well, we can't do that I think we'll just keep it on and that way we can choose to table it if we deem that's appropriate from the group.
Sure.
Thanks. Okay. All right. So we will now move on to item 1, 24-10 OVR block 76, lots 13-14, a request by Shane and Becca Goranson for new construction of a single family dwelling within the A-Rod, and that's on Green Street within block 76. So kind of that front end of town. This is a public hearing and the hearing was noticed to the public on the 24th day of April. And the public hearing has now begun. It will take the form of a staff presentation and then an applicant presentation. And then there'll be a time for public comment to get the official public comment for the record. At that point, the committee will deliberate and we will potentially ask the applicant or staff additional questions during that time frame. And then there will typically be a time for you to provide any rebuttal or final comments before we vote. And then we would close the hearing. So that's kind of what we're doing now. So staff, if you want to proceed, Sheila.
Hello, everyone. Can you see my screen? Because for some reason I'm seeing double of it. So I just want to make sure you're not seeing double.
You're good. Okay,
good. So we do have a new single family residential structure within the A-Rod. The project name is 2410 OVR, which stands for Overlay District, Block 76, lots 13 and 14. The site is on Block 76, lot 13 and 14. It's the northeast corner of 5th and Green Street. The applicant and owners are Shane and Rebecca Goranson. The zoning is business pedestrian, and it's within the Architectural Review Overlay District, which is what you're reviewing tonight. But it's also within the Avalanche Hazard Overlay District, the Blue Zone, which the Planning Commission will be reviewing on May 21st. We had all required documents and materials submitted on March 11th, and all fees have been paid. It was posted on the town website April 25th and the Silverton Standard and Minor on April 25th as well, and mailed to adjacent landowners on April 25th. No public comments have been received to date. Oops, sorry. This is a request for a new single-family residential structure. It's on a 5,000 square foot lot. The structure itself is 2,198 square feet. Has an attached 2-car garage, a covered porch, and a deck. The entrance in the garage faces Fifth Street. It has steep roofs at the main gable, slope shed roofs at dormers and outer edges. The exterior materials are rusted corrugated steel roofing, vertical wood board siding. It will have vertical doors and windows on most areas, and they will not be doing double hung windows. There is a proposed fence that's 6 foot by 3 foot that's made of stone and rusted steel cage. This is part of their avalanche mitigation as part of their avalanche permit. This structure is, these are the renderings, as you can see. These first one up here is west facing. Then we have east facing, south, and this other one at the bottom is also, that should be the north facing. So your west facing would be against Fifth, and then your south facing would be against Green. And if I get those turned around, I apologize. Every time I look at it, I get turned around again. The code references within the AROD, this is section 16-4800, development in the Architectural Review Overlay District. Again, this applies because it's new construction as viewed from the Heritage Tourism Corridor. We do have additional design standards which can offer site-specific conditions. The ones bolded here are the ones I'll be going over: site layout, site building orientation, fencing, and architectural, structural, mass, and scale design requirements for the purpose of compatibility with existing structures. So an analysis of those site-specific conditions, the site layout and site building orientation. The existing structure currently faces Green Street, and most of the proposed structure. Existing structures face Green Street. This proposed structure will not. They have it shown to front onto Fifth Street with both the garage and the main entrance. So should the HR or the Historic Review Committee feel that it should be more in line with what the existing structures are doing now, you could make a condition that the building be redesigned to face Green Street to match existing site layouts and building orientations. For fencing, the proposed gabion, and I'm probably not saying that correctly, it's needed to address the avalanche considerations in the blue avalanche zone. And again, as I noted earlier, the Planning Commission will be reviewing this on May 21st. The materials look to be in keeping with the historic area, and staff does not have any site-specific recommendations for that. The last one is the architectural, structural, mass, and scale design requirements for the purpose of compatibility with the existing structures. And all of these seem to be in scale and design and compatible with surrounding structures. So staff also does not have any site-specific recommendations for those elements. So staff finds that the applicant submitted all the required materials within the time frame, and those materials comply with conditions of 1646 of the Silverton Municipal Code. We do recommend approval of the AROD application for a new single-family residential structure. However, should the Historic Review Committee feel that the building should be redesigned to face Green Street, we do have a condition here that you could apply. Again, this is always up to the committee. You may choose to approve with conditions, continue, or deny the application based on this testimony and evidence you hear tonight. These are your recommended approvals. We have the approval with condition, and if you decide to go that route, we can go back a slide to show you what that condition would be. And then we have if you choose to continue it or to deny. I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thanks, Sheila. If we have questions for you, they'll be in the deliberation portion for our public hearing process. Okay, thanks for the presentation. You may state your name and any just general comments you want to add on behalf of the applicant.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm Stephen Golick, architect. And I've been working with Shane and Rebecca Goranson on this house project for quite some time. I wanted to give you a couple more things to look at that might help. I wanted you to have that perspective sketch right in front of you as we talk about entries. And now this is how we sit relative to the lots and roads around the site. This line is the outer edge of the blue zone, which just gets into a portion of this lot and just barely the end of that, let's see, I think we're calling that south side of the house. And you can see that the house is elongated parallel to the long dimension of the lot. Now, I think the single most important step in the evolution of a building design is a location of the entry. Everything inside the building flows from where the entrance is. The entrance also controls all the movement in and out of the building. And for an entrance to be located properly, it really needs to be visible as soon as the building is visible. You want to be able to see, as soon as you see the building, where the entry is. That allows people to figure out how they're going to enter, where they're going to leave their car or wherever, how they're going to get there, their path on the entry. They don't have any mysteries to solve to figure out how to get into this building. Now, and the same thing, and so that entry also, when they're located properly, the rest of the building kind of unfolds from there and feels right. If an entrance is in the wrong place, the rest of the building never feels right. So it's a very critical piece of the building and designing a building. So in looking at how do you see this building, you look at what the angle of approach is. And for the other example, the other buildings that are mentioned, even though the house on the other end of the block that has adjacency to two streets has an entry on the Green Street side, but the approach is from Green Street. You turn from Green Street onto 6th, there's the house, there's the entry. It's the first thing you see. Now, the rest of the lots on that block have a different situation. They're in the middle of the block. You don't see anything of the sides of those houses. All you see actually is the back, because the entrance, the access to those lots is off the alley. So that's where the entrance really is, the functional entrance to those houses. They each had something that looks like an entry on the Green Street side, which isn't a bad idea to make it look not like the back of the building, but functionally those are back porches. Those aren't the entries to those houses. So in a way, they're like fake entries. But not bad, I guess. It improved the appearance, I think, for people driving down Green, but that's how they work as entries. Now, the approach to this house is from 5th Street. You have to come down Reese, turn left, and come down 5th Street. So this is the first you'll see of this house, is this corner of the house. So that's why the entry is here, so that it is visible as soon as you see the house. And given the way 5th Street ends, some kind of entry on Green Street isn't even visible. There's no way it could even be seen. So 2 things about placing an entrance. One is that placement so that it's the first thing you see when you see the house. And the second thing is to shape it. so that it stands out from the house. So here it's brought out in front of the main line of the building so that it presents itself to anyone coming to the house. So that's why, as far as building design goes, why the entry is there. Although on the Green Street side, we wanted that to relate to the rest of the buildings on the lot by coming down lower in height and scale and having a bay window as a feature that provides a kind of gift to the street, to Green Street. And gives it a welcoming image from that perspective. Now, the other thing about how you see this house is that you're all going to see it coming into town on Green Street. And there's nothing that's going to be wait a minute. Okay, Green Street, yeah. You're going to see this way, is your way into this. Although you're going to end up coming to the house from this direction, you're going to see it square to that long face of the house. And so also important to present that face to all those incoming motorists. This is going to be the first thing you see coming into Silverton. So I think it's very important that it addresses those people frontally and has an entry that's obvious and welcoming. So it doesn't look like the side of a house. And so that's why that orientation is important in that direction. Any questions about that?
We can ask you in the later session,
Okay.
the deliberation session, but you'll have, like, if we have questions, you'll have plenty of opportunity to speak if some other issue comes up too.
The other thing that will be front and center at this house in this location is that gabion fence. So I included some pictures for you to see, to show you what that looks like. So again, we're looking for something that looks like it belongs. And I don't know if anything says Silverton more than a pile of rocks. And in a way, it's a well-organized, constructed pile of rocks that, says it's a solid, it's permanent, it's, what we've got here. And I don't know, might have to fight some of the rocks for sale kids for these rocks, but that's the idea, is that, and also we're looking for, a significant barrier to the visual busyness of all that traffic going by. The pavement surface of Green Street is about 4 to 5 feet above the ground immediately adjacent to Green Street. Now, the houses that have been built along that block are all on fill or surrounded by fill. So their ground level is about 3 feet below the pavement. Well, that elevates all that traffic and it's just zooming by. This is probably the busiest piece of pavement in town. So trying to get a little bit of screening and take some of that busyness out of the view and focus more on the background, which is spectacular. And the other thing that will help a little bit with is some sound control. It's a very noisy location. And the other thing, of course, that Gabion wall does is function as a blocking or diverting structure for the potential avalanche run out. Tail end of the blue zone. We've done the avalanche study, and the lateral load at this edge of the blue zone is not particularly significant. It's less than the wind load here in Silverton, but it's still something to protect against. And we'll be, engineering everything in the building as well as around for that, for those forces. And let's see. Really just addressing the items that were mentioned in the staff report. Is there anything else anyone wants to know about the project? Oh, windows. Yeah, there's another one. Lucy, did you say that the architectural guidelines in this district are going to be rewritten?
Yes.
Yes. I've watched the evolution of architectural guidelines in historic districts here in the San Juans for all my time here. I chaired the corresponding board in Durango for 15 years. So I've dealt with that issue a lot. Silverton or Telluride was the first to come along with guidelines and for construction and new construction in their historic district. And their first attempt mentioned all the things that are characteristic about historic architecture in Telluride, and did point towards copying or mimicking those characteristics. What they got from that, they discovered, was fake Victorians. Nothing about those Victorians that had gingerbread planted on them or a certain kind of window or a certain kind of door really ended up looking authentic. So they changed that. And they did, and Durango saw that and developed a set of guidelines that was along the same direction that Telluride went, which is to relate to existing historic buildings, but not try to copy or mimic them. New buildings are built in a different era, different materials, different codes, different cultures, different resources. Everything is about different now than it was 100+ years ago. So what we've gone to is making sure that new buildings relate well and are good referential neighbors for authentic historic houses without trying to imitate or copy them in some way. So what happens with the copies is it diminishes the historic record. People can't tell, well, what's new, what's old. Well, the new ones kind of look old, but not really. So which of these is new and which is old isn't something you really want to invite in a historic district. You'd rather the historic buildings actually fit better when the neighbors aren't trying to copy them, but instead doing things with shape and scale and mass and materials that relate to their neighbors and provide a harmonious sort of coordination and cohabitation with them without trying to imitate them. Does that make sense? So when you get two windows, well, double hung windows, small panes of glass, that's all you could do in, the late 1800s. Good luck trying to get some big sheets of glass here, even after the train came in. I mean, it didn't happen. Yeah, and so that's the way windows were, that's what was available for windows in that time. One way that different windows work is to distinguish themselves from the historic buildings, but you want to do it in a way that isn't jarring or incompatible. We're looking for a compatible relationship. And there's also a lot of other reasons why different windows are used in design and construction in homes. And double hungs don't do everything that you'd like a window to do. First of all, they don't perform as well in terms of energy loss because they've got to slide up and down. They don't seal tightly so that you can move them. And so they're harder to meet current energy codes with. Here's a place where we start to get codes that conflict with each other. The other aspect of them, another aspect of them relative to other windows is, say, for example, a casement window you can use to, direct breezes or airflow in and out of a house for better ventilation. You can use the way they open to block noise like from traffic on this site and still have ventilation. You open a double hung window and it's just all the noise comes straight in. Casement windows, ones that open like a door, awning windows open from the bottom out. They do a similar thing. They get ventilation, but they block a lot of the noise. Noise is a big issue at this site. And they're also easier to keep open for ventilation in the rain, which we often have in the summers in the afternoon. So there's things that windows do functionally that work better with different kinds of window than were widely available in the 1800s. I would encourage you to look more for a harmonious relationship to historic buildings as opposed to anything that tends towards imitating them. And the other thing about prescriptive approaches to historic design guidelines or any real design guidelines, prescribing certain elements that must be included doesn't always fit into the program or the design of the building. So it often can invite an awkward outcome. I think it works better to look at the whole picture. How does this whole design put together relate to its neighbors? As opposed to, does it have a certain kind of trim? Does it have a certain kind of window? Does it have a certain kind of gutter? Does it have a certain kind of door? Those things tend to get just tacked on when it's a prescriptive code. That's been my experience.
Okay, well, thank you for adding your comments. We will now move to public comment. If there is anyone here for public comment regarding the application we just heard and only the application we just heard, we don't have any in-person comment, but if there's anyone on Zoom, which it does not look like there is. All right, so seeing none, we will move past the public comment portion. So we will now allow the committee to discuss the application. And during that time, committee members can ask questions directly of the applicant or directly of staff as well. So I will just kick it off by thanking the applicant and Sheila for putting together such a comprehensive package for us tonight. I do appreciate, Sheila, how you have broken out kind of what is and isn't within the purview of the committee. So just as a reminder for committee members, we are here to enforce the guidelines as we have them, and only the guidelines that we have. So I'm curious if there are thoughts initially about which of the items that we should weigh in on even before we kind of start talking about them, from anyone.
Well, I will say that at the beginning of this process, I was against this house because it's, to me, facing the wrong way. But after your presentation, you've won me over. I agree with what you say, that the way it's situated. And the front, the part facing Green Street, I think it's going to be fine because honestly, because it's so far down, I don't even know if you'd see the doors
Yeah.
very well.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with this house. The only thing is, as far as the fence goes, I do recall reading in your packet that there's a lot of fences like that in Silverton. And I happen to be one of the few people in this town who actually grew up here. And I don't really remember any of these fences.
I didn't mean as a fence. I just meant as a kind of structure that was used for retaining purposes, mostly in the
I'll just remind you,
areas.
like, we have a strict process, so if you can wait until we ask you a question like that,
Oh,
if you don't mind, we will give you plenty of chance to rebut, but right now we're just doing committee discussion.
But I don't have a problem with the fence or the wall either, because I don't think a whole lot of it will be seen from street level. And people are driving by pretty fast, so they may not even see it. And if it protects the home from the avalanche, God forbid, then that's a good thing.
Thanks, Maria. Any other initial thoughts from the team? Melissa?
Yeah, hey, well, I love the south facing entrance simply because it's just practical, because it faces south, and that's the way it just keeps it clear. Nature takes care of it without snow building up. I think it's very practical, on top of the reasons that Stephen mentioned about looking at the entry as you roll into town. So I think that's great. And the fence will literally disappear because, like you said, piles of rock in Silverton. So I think it's a really a practical solution for, yeah, the potential blue zone. So overall, I think it's really well done, and I'm in favor of it.
Nice, thanks, Melissa. Jim, anything? Do
I do have,
I'm sorry?
you have a question?
yes. Wasn't there an encroachment that we need to talk about?
So encroachments are not within our purview as a committee.
Okay, well, it was in our packet.
I know Sheila included a lot of stuff that's in our packet that's just for FYI. That doesn't really have anything to do with us, and that was really more for the planning commission. An example would be the orientation of the building. Previously, this committee has chosen not to weigh in on fences. So those are some items that we may or may not, I mean, everyone's fine with them, so it's not really worth discussing whether they're within our purview, but typically they're not. So let's say your hands up.
Just for clarity, that was originally a staircase that was going to face Green Street that has been since removed. So that just was still some narrative in the packet about that, but it's no longer, the staircase doesn't exist. That was going to face Green Street, that was going to require a variance. So I had a question about that too, and then I got an answer, just so for clarity, everybody knows.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't realize that there were corrections.
You weren't told that.
Staff report. Thank you, Melissa. Okay. So I think the other issue that comes up in the checklist is really just the windows, but I think we had a revision to the A-Rod code recently compared to other A-Rods that we've reviewed. And I don't know that windows are even part of our discussion anymore, other than general architectural, structural, mass, and scale design requirements, as that terminology is how I'm reading it. I don't know if you guys had an opinion on that. On whether we should even be talking about the windows.
Well, I, in support of what, Steven said about, technology and not mimicking, and let's do something that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I think the windows are smart.
Yeah. There's also a note that the lights they're intending to install are dark sky compliant. Thank you for that. Very cool. I think for my money, there's nothing here in this packet that really is in conflict with anything that we would need to weigh in on at all.
I don't have a problem with the windows.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think for the fence, like I said before, we've had multiple applications where we said if the fence is 6 feet or lower, we as a committee aren't weighing in on it. So from the perspective of honoring our own precedent, if we're going to continue to enforce the same way, then I would assume we wouldn't weigh in on the fence either. So
Jesse,
Uh,
I kind of, I have a little bit of a question about that, only
Yeah.
because it really clearly states in section 16.4.800 4C that landscaping, screening, and fencing are part of our purview. So
okay,
yeah, I think it is part of our discussion, and I think the fencing's great. But I know that we've decided not to weigh in on that, but when I read the actual code, it
Mhm.
does say that we need to consider recommendation of landscaping, screening, and fencing.
yeah, I wonder if this is something where we could ask staff to just build a memo for us about the different fence requirements, because my understanding is in other parts of the code, there's like 3 or 4 places where fence appears, and it basically says if it's under 6 feet, then the town can't really weigh in on it. Now, obviously, with our new code, the more restrictive would apply, but I don't think we have that set up here. So there's a conflict, I think, in the code.
And I
So-
honestly think fencing should be considered, because
Okay.
in my opinion, that's kind of granted what Maria said about this one being down low and we will never really even see it, but that's
Mhm.
not always the case. And so imagine some kind of, I can use an example of some fencing behind Silverton Grocery, which it's fine, it's what it is. But I just think fencing does matter, and it should be part of architectural review.
Okay, so maybe, Lucy, do you have any thoughts on that before?
Sure, yeah, I just wanted to provide a quick comment that, that within the historic or within the A-Rod code, there is a section for it. I was just looking for it. That says the most stringent shall apply. And so because the code does allow you to make site-specific comments or conditions related to fencing, that would be the more stringent in this case. And then this section of code allows for site-specific conditions, not so much as like compared to a specific standard. And so that's why we continue to include them, is because it's site-specific, it's not
Yeah,
an overarching standard. So if you choose not to, in this case, that's okay. But you just have the authority to, for every application that's received until that section is removed from the code.
yeah, I just think we've had some discussion on the committee, like more than once. I think like half the items we've seen have a fence that's 6 feet high. And so I would just request from staff, just as a note, that the next time that comes up, that maybe we do a little bit of code analysis about all the different fence things. Because I don't want us to be applying things inconsistently over time. And previously, we have told applicants, you know what, we're not going to weigh in on your fence. But to your point, we could choose to do so if we interpreted the code in its strictest sense. And so what I don't want us to do is set ourselves up to overreach in some cases and then be like more lenient in others, because that's kind of unfair. So that's kind of my thought process there. Because I agree with you, Melissa, there is a place that it says that we could weigh in on fences. And there's also places in the code that imply that we probably shouldn't. So, so far we haven't really. It's not like, yeah, consistency for our applicants is just all I'm thinking about. Now, I don't need to keep rambling on about that while we have an applicant here who probably wants to get home to dinner. So, aside from that procedural note for us as a committee, is there any more discussion before we should make a motion here? Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I move to recommend approval of case 2410, an A-ROT application for a single home family residential structure located at block 76, lot 1314, to be described as Green Street as presented, finding the A-ROT application in compliance.
I will second.
awesome. All right, if we could get a roll call, please. Chairperson Rowe? Yes. Melissa Childs?
Yes.
Maria Samora?
Yes.
And trustee Harper?
Yes.
All right, motion approves. Okay, this public hearing is now closed. Thank you for showing up. We really appreciate it, and we will move on next to the Board of Trustees.
Well, thank you very much for your time and consideration. And Maria, you must know Sandy Campusano,
I've heard of her. I don't know her personally.
another person who grew up here.
Yeah,
She's one of our good ambassadors.
yeah, she is. She does a lot of good things.
Yeah.
Okay, we will now move on to the next section of our agenda, committee business appointments. So here we have a vacant appointment role, which is our vice chair, which was Mayor Furman previously. I know we don't have all of our committee members here, but I will tell you all, I am going to be remote next meeting. And it would be great from my perspective, selfishly, to find ourselves a vice chair for the next meeting, but I can also be persuaded, like if you guys, for example, really wanted to nominate David and he's not here, Carl and they're not here. So we can either choose to pick someone, or we can choose item to the next meeting.
I don't have a problem appointing someone right now.
Okay.
Sure, I'll appoint anyone you'd like.
Yeah. I think my only thoughts on the matter were I would like it to be someone who is capable of running the meetings and willing to run the meetings. And if you were willing, I would like to nominate you because you have been on the planning commission and this committee for a really long time. And I think that continuity would be nice.
That sounds good. A question, I mean, do you have to be physically present to run the meeting? It sounds
No.
like that's.
No, I
preferred.
also might be an applicant to the next meeting. That's another consideration. I guess I don't have to physically be present. So I guess I just don't want us to move forward without like having a vice chair personally, selfishly. But that's
Right. I'm willing. I just can't necessarily commit to being there in person. And I know it's preferred if I'm running the meeting. If I knew in advance, I would make every effort to be there in person. But I'm willing. Thank you.
yeah. So with Melissa's caveat that she may not be here in person to run the meeting, do you all like the idea of Melissa? Do we have other people we think we might want to, you're like visiting?
Yeah, if you're asking me, in my opinion, absolutely. I think Melissa would be great. I don't think you necessarily have to be in person to run the meeting. I know her longevity here in the community and well respected, and I think she'd be great.
Yeah.
I think she'd be great.
Awesome. Okay. Well, in that case, I will move to appoint Melissa Childs a vice chair of the committee.
I second.
Thank you. Okay, if we can have the roll call, please. Yep. Chairperson Rowe? Yes. Melissa Childs?
Yes.
Maria Samora?
Yes.
And trustee Harper?
Yes.
All right, motion approved. Awesome. Thanks, Melissa, for being willing to serve. Namaste. Okay, so our next item is reports. I don't believe we have any reports. Anyone Okay. And then the next item is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. I sent some just type errors to Anna, but like my name was misspelled and there was another couple of typos. But aside from that, I have no substantive revisions. Does anyone else?
No, they read well.
Great. Fantastic. Can I get a motion?
On a motion to adjourn the meeting? Is that what we're,
Approve the minutes.
approve the minutes?
Second.
Second.
A roll call, please.
All right, Chairperson Rowe,
Yes.
Melissa Childs,
Yes.
Maria Samora,
Yes.
and Trustee Harper.
Yes.
All right, motion approved.
Awesome. Okay, our last item is public comment. We don't have anyone in person at the moment, but if there's anyone on Zoom, please raise your hand. This would be your time to comment. It looks like we have no additional attendees on Zoom. Okay, public comment is closed. I now move to adjourn the meeting as our business is concluded.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, do you mind seconding my?
Oh, absolutely. I second.
Okay,
Let's get out of here.
okay,
All right, Chairperson Rowe,
yes.
Melissa Childs,
Yes.
Maria Samora,
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, this meeting is now concluded. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa
Thank you.
Bye.
and Childs. Yeah.